Conveyancers for Change is a podcast that pulls back the curtain on the legal property industry and beyond, unpacking the issues that matter in 2022 and spotlighting the change makers in a profession that can be highly stressful and incredibly rewarding in equal measures. Expect discussions that challenge the norm and aim to drive change in the conveyancing industry and beyond. My name is Vicky and I'm a formal commercial paralegal with a law degree, and I'll be hosting the podcast with the incredible Aconveyancing, who are a conveyancing firm championing change in the legal industry for legal professionals. Can I have a baby and have a career? Will my boss be supportive and flexible when I've had my baby? Will I be treated differently at work now I'm a parent? These are some of the very common questions going through the minds of women who work, who are considering and sometimes even worrying about whether or not to have children and when to have children, and the potential impact it may have on their career and on their mental health. We're talking about a topic that is simply not talked about enough, and that is maternity leave, returning to work, postnatal health, and the juggle between having children and having a career. So on today's podcast, I'm really excited. We have got Michelle Oliver, who's legal director and conveyancer at Aconveyancing, and you've got a gorgeous 10-month-old baby.
Yep.
Mila. Smiliest baby in the world. We
Lovely,
love her.
yeah.
We love her. And then we also have dialing in Nicola Lancaster, who's an exec assistant with the Conveyancing Foundation, working to provide mental health support to those in the conveyancing industry, which is amazing. And you're a mum yourself as well, aren't you, Nicola?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
I've got 2 girls, 3 and 5, so they're very busy little bees.
Oh. So Michelle, you've obviously, come into the legal industry and worked your way up to legal director level, which is then when you had your baby. But I'd love, first of all, if you wouldn't mind opening up a little bit about it, I'd love to ask you what sort of went through your mind at the time where you and your husband started to think about, okay, we want to start having a family, and obviously you've got this really demanding, really crazy, hectic career, which you love as well. What went through your mind before having your baby?
So for me, I've been at Aconveyancing 2 years this June. Before that, I was at a previous law firm, and I was head of the residential conveyancing department. So for me, when I was thinking about having a child, I made that very, very clear to Natalie. So there was Natalie being my co-director, so managing director of Aconveyancing. So when I was going to move from the previous firm that I was at, I'd had an interview lined up with Natalie, and it was coming up, and I thought, oh no, I can't go. We're in the process, we've just got married, we're trying for a baby. I don't want to start a new legal firm.
So this was when you were...
Yeah, so I was just transitioning over.
And you were then applying for a new role at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I knew that I'd reached the ceiling at the firm that I was at, and I knew that I wanted to be a director. So me and Natalie were in discussions about coming over to Aconveyancing. We'd set down an interview date, and then this guilt trip got to me, and it was like, you can't start a new firm, you can't start a new practice and then fall pregnant straight away. So there was that instant guilt. So I cancelled the interview.
Guilt in what sense?
In terms of thinking, I've just started a new position, I'm going in as a director level, and I've got responsibilities. I'd be responsible for managing a team, an office, and then I fall pregnant and then have to go off on maternity. So, it's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's you doubt yourself because you think, I really want to progress my career, I've worked so hard, but at the same time I was 33, and it's well known that by the time solicitors get to their peak of their career, their fertility rates are dropping, and it's that time, we need to start thinking about having children. Me and Luke loved our life, but it was, this is it now. We need to start thinking about having a family. So cancelled my interview, and Natalie was I did, yeah. So I spoke to Natalie and she was like, what are you playing at? Come on, and I was like, I'm really honest, I've just got married, we're thinking about having a child. And she was like, don't be so silly, I would 100% expect that. You're at that age, there's no issues, like come and have an interview, come and work for us, we'll support you 100%. So having that reassurance made me make the move. And I think if it wasn't for Natalie being so supportive and for actually sitting me down and saying, we would expect you to, the day that you tell me you're having a baby will be the most amazing news ever.
Wow.
I wouldn't have probably moved to Aconveyancing at the time that I did, and I couldn't imagine not being here now.
I just think it's incredible, and Nicola, I don't know what your sort of experience from your own personal experience and then working in the role you're working at now. I guess it is that thing, isn't it? Like you say, you sort of are getting to the peak of your career, but then there's that whole thought process you go through with, having a baby, is it the right time? Guilt, as in, I care so much about my team, am I going to let them down for me going and starting a family?
Yeah.
It's a lot to go through, and then I guess for a lot of women as well, there's that fear of, if I tell my boss, and that must have gone through your mind, I don't want to, maybe you were hesitant to then tell Natalie at Acon, I'm going to have a baby, in case they're like, oh, well, in fact, we need your commitment. So, and you don't know whether you're going to get that support. So,
I mean, I'd been at the practice for 6 months by the time that I'd fell pregnant with Mila. As soon as I found out that I was pregnant, I'd obviously told friends of, my family, immediate family, and automatically the next person that I needed to tell was Natalie. And it was over the Christmas period, and I texted her, I was like, can I come round for a cup of tea? And she said straight away she knew that.
Really?
Yeah. But, really, she was over the moon and supported me throughout the whole of my pregnancy.
And that is incredible. And I guess
amazing.
That's what every woman hopes for, that's working, that they, you can turn around to your team or your line manager and say, I'm having a baby, and you get that support. Nicola, is this an experience that you can relate to, in the conveyancing world, or in the legal world in general? Generally, what's the sort of maternity experience like for women, would you say?
It is wonderful to hear that you had such a positive experience, and that's fantastic. And I think it's also great that you had that transparency at the outset, and that's probably one thing that I would encourage employers and employees, even if it's through your usual one-to-ones, is having that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, and for people not to be afraid to talk about it. So, at least then employers are aware of someone's plans and someone's desire to have children, and it can almost in the background make plans if they need to expand their team. And also that employee is not afraid to then, speak out and say, the hopes for the future, or even I know from some of my friends and colleagues, inside and outside of the conveyancing world, is almost like that fear of saying, I'm pregnant, and then having to, work towards what that's going to look like for the next, 6 to 9 months, depending on when they've broken that news. I think it's just having the transparency, and I don't think that everybody's probably journey has been exactly the same, but I think just having those open lines of communication, and even with having the 1 3 year, 5 year plan, and knowing someone's desire perhaps to start a family, whether that be a male or a female, and there may be other factors that affect that, in terms of fertility or baby loss and other things like that really shouldn't be taboo subjects anymore, and that we should all be able to talk about that openly.
Yeah, well,
absolutely,
100%. It seems like the industry is making steps, well, there are people in the industry making steps in this area. So it was in the press recently, the UK law firm Burgess May appointed a fertility officer. It was Natalie Sutherland, to convince junior lawyers that there was no need, exactly like you say, to keep your pregnancy plans a secret, and, you know, really encourage like transparency and support. Actually, touching on what you said earlier, Natalie Sutherland, this appointed fertility officer, she says, the impression that me and my peers were given early in our careers was, if you want to do well, you shouldn't be having babies until you're established. But she said, but that compounds the problem, because usually you only become established when you're well into your 30s, when your fertility is starting to decline. So there's, you know, especially for junior lawyers as well, or as early on in your careers as possible, you want to know. Yeah. We're here, like, we're here to support you and to, like, champion, you know, anyone that wants to have kids, you know, men, women, start families, we're here to support you, and your careers, they're not going to, you know, decline, or you're going to experience, you know, change or stress when you come back from maternity leave. Do you think, Nicola, that we need to sort of challenge the culture of law firms and companies surrounding pregnancy, maternity, and like you said as well, there's other sort of taboo subjects, pregnancy loss and stuff. Do you think that there's still a long way to go, and that companies do need to be challenged in this area?
Absolutely, yep, definitely. And I think in terms of with regards to women in careers and peaks in their careers, like, I know personally, and I would say, you know, from friends and colleagues as well, I think mothers, being a mother and being a parent, it makes you more decisive, it makes you stronger, it makes you resilient, you're better at multitasking. There's a lot of skills that you gain from being a parent that I think that I am a stronger, harder worker and more capable now than I was before. And, you know, we all have our absolute awful days when we've been up all night and, you know, come into work in the morning, but sometimes you just need that little push just to get you going. And I think that you know, if we look at some of our people that we've got in, you know, director and senior positions, and almost like, I don't know, it's like a chrysalis to a butterfly moment for some people. And I do think that, you know, mothers should be empowered, and there shouldn't be any fear with regards to, you know, taking time off out of career to be a mother, be a parent. Come back stronger.
I absolutely love what you said as well, because I think we sort of all, as warriors as well, and if you really care about your career, you sort of jump to the, how is it negatively, you know, going to affect me or impact my career? Whereas actually, I love, you know, what you said about all these skills that you develop becoming a mum, that actually it's like, and this is going to make me even better at my job. Michelle, what's your experience on that?
So at Aconveyancing, we're largely a female-dominated company. So out of 45 employees, 42 of them are currently women.
Girl power.
Girl power, absolutely. Sorry, boys. We actively encourage all of our working mums to do the school run. They're able to work flexible hours as long as the clients are managed, clients' expectations are managed, and that we don't have any complaints, which we don't, and all of our working mums handle their caseloads impeccably and are able to be a really good mum as well. And I think it just goes to just supporting flexible working, supporting their mental health, making sure that there's adequate support in place. And I just think that I'm able, certainly from my point of view, I'm able to pick Mila up from nursery on a Thursday and a Friday, and I love that. So I can be at work all day, go and pick her up, be there to pick her up and actually be a mum, but then knowing that I can actually log on and just catch up with my work of an evening or in the morning. And I think that's installed throughout our company. So Natalie previously worked for a firm where, you know, she said to me, I was always the last at the school gates, you know, and she tells me these stories where she'd like be razzing round the corner and her children would just be standing there waiting for her. And she, you know, when I came back from maternity, she was like, I don't want this for you, I don't want it for any of my staff members, and I will actively promote that, you know, throughout the whole company.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Would you say, Nicola, that having that support and that flexibility, would you say, Nicola, that that's quite rare, or is it common?
Yeah, I think that it is changing, and I think that COVID has a lot to do with that. I think that is the hybrid between the remote working and office working. And I think that we do need to, as employers, keep on giving people the flexibility. So flexible working hours, if that's possible, as you say, Michelle, as long as the client's expectations are met. Remote working, have the ability to, attend appointments, pick your child up when they're ill. If there are, particularly at Christmas time nativities and things like that a parent wants to attend. And one thing, I listened to the podcast with Natalie Moore and David Opie on the 4-day working week. And I think it's really interesting that initiatives like that are being trials, and I think that will be really important going into the future, particularly for mothers returning to work and seeing whether a 4-day working pattern is something that will work for them. I think particularly in legal services and conveyancing, it's very difficult for some mothers returning to work to even consider part-time working. I think obviously prior to them working, it would have been full-time hours with a full caseload. And I think with initiatives like a 4-day working week and just seeing how those trials are run through different firms and whether or not they are feasible or not, and for everybody within the industry to talk openly about it and what the pros and cons of that is. And I just think that we are getting there. Slowly, but more work needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely. And what's your experience, Michelle, like as legal director as well, and your firm trialling the 4-day work week? How has that positively impacted, you and for your husband as well with Parenthood?
So currently we are in the I think we're our fourth week into the 4-day week trial. So far it's going really good, really positive feedback. I think one of the reasons why we were really keen to trial it as a company was because a lot of our employees, particularly mums, were getting to the weekend and was doing their washing, their ironing, their cooking,
all the chores,
shopping, the chores, and weren't actually having, the children's parties.
Just quality time, like going to the life centre or like
absolutely, and they weren't having time to themselves, or they weren't having time to be a parent. So we obviously introduced that to give our employers their own time. So if we call it an A day, so if on their A day they want to go to the gym, they want to have a day to themselves, then they obviously can do that guilt-free, and it's really, really positive. So particularly I oversee the Shirley office, and my team are really embracing the 4-day week. They're really enjoying it. They get a day to themselves. They're coming back to work refreshed, and they don't have to worry about their caseload because we're so team orientated, so that when they're on their A day, their work is being picked up, and it's not a matter that their clients are being left for a day, because they're not. So they're coming back to an inbox that's been dealt with, that they haven't got a backlash. And I think that's really important because, if you're a mum and you have to have a day off with your children, if your children are unwell and you haven't got childcare, I think in the back of your mind you're then dreading coming back into work because you know that you've got that backlash and you've got an inbox full of emails waiting to be dealt with, and I think it's emphasising the team ethics, and we've got values as a company, and one of them is one team, and each of our employees fully embrace that. So they stick together, they support each other, they help each other, and they acknowledge that some of us aren't able to work as many hours as others, and they're very, very much team players, and I think that's really, really important.
It's just like having that level of understanding, isn't it? And with the flexible hours, like you were suggesting, Nicola, I guess it gives you that time to re-energise, that you can come back into the office and be on your A game, and also then not have that guilt at the back of your mind, because you're like, I've had a really productive weekend doing everything I need to do, but I've spent time with my family as well, and now I can get back on it at work. In terms of the other work that you do, Nicola, with the Conveyancing Foundation, so a lot of your focus is on supporting the mental health of conveyancers, which again, the whole flexibility element, all of that, it's all about supporting and caring for the well-being of your staff. Could you talk a little bit about what you experience with mothers in the workplace in terms of impact on mental health, Nicola?
Yeah, I'm sure, Michelle, you know too well how stressful conveyancing can be, and the pressure is always on. And I just think that there needs to be some kind of acknowledgement when mothers are first returning after maternity leave that there are added stresses to that. It's preparing mothers to transition back into work, and I think that we need to be prepared for that. And I think particularly after COVID, I'm sure that Michelle, that you went through your pregnancy and having your child and returning to work would have been at a different stage to myself, and as we affectionately call them, COVID babies. You've not been able to spend your maternity leave sharing care of your child, and with them being around other family members, other individuals, taking them to the groups that some of us would have the privilege of doing. And unfortunately that means that when mothers are returning to work, there is that separation anxiety, both for mothers and for the children. It's probably not as easy as it was when I returned to work. And I think there's just certain elements that we need to be more mindful as employers, that it is very difficult. And not just that as well, it is a stressful, pressured environment, and we're dealing with parents, both mothers and fathers, that are returning to work or coming into work some days. They've got very, very small children that have perhaps been up all night, and it's already a very, very testing environment without adding any other emotional or other factors into that. And I think that we just need to support parents and encourage groups within the workplace. If somebody is returning to work after perhaps their first child, support from other parents that are within the company, so they know almost what to expect, or if they're having a bit of difficulty adjusting or navigating through that, there is support available.
Yeah, definitely. Are there, or from your experience, are there set sort of things or strategies that employers put in place, during that transition process when mums are returning, or dads as well, after paternity leave as well, or after maternity leave for mums? Are there sort of set things, strategies that employers can put in place? I mean, obviously having someone like appointed as, a point of contact, someone to talk to is great. Is there anything else that other companies do really well in that respect?
I think it would differ from firm to firm. I think it's really important, for both employee and employer to be really mindful with their keep in touch days, and for these to be around, key events, key training, perhaps more condensed when they're due to return and transition back into the workplace. I think in terms of flexibility, we talk a lot about flexibility. If there is almost a return to work that's phased and a build of days, just to get somebody transitioned, back into the environment, and that being as well with a caseload that is built up as well, like a phase approach into the workplace. Also being able to have like that two-way conversation of, if somebody is full-time, is there the flexibility to then reduce their hours? So not only to build up, but to reduce if necessary. And also, just include and engage anybody that is on maternity leave if there is any work events going on, whether that be parties or other functions or training, just to always give the person on maternity leave the option to attend those, and just keep them really engaged in the workplace, and just making that transition back to work even easier.
Definitely, because I think there's that. These are conversations that I've had with friends just before they were thinking about starting a family, and they're like doing well at work, or they have these fears and worries that they're going to return after maternity leave, and either their job will kind of have been taken away from them, or they're going to feel really out of the loop, or having that fear that they're not included anymore. What was your experience like coming back?
Really
Did you have
positive.
any of those worries?
Yeah, really positive. No, so I think Aconveyancing are very much a family anyway, so I felt throughout the whole of my maternity leave I kept in touch with not only with the management team but all members of staff. I took Mila into the offices, so she'd gone round all 3 of our offices at the time.
On tour.
On tour, Mila on tour. And also at Aconveyancing we offer in like a buddy system, so we do that with our new starters anyway. So when we have any new starter, they are allocated a buddy, so we have a buddy system, so they go for lunch, they're their point of contact if they need any help or assistance. When they are due to come back to work, there'll be support around them where certainly I'll reach out and offer my help and assistance and guidance and talk to them about their concerns, any worries that they've got. Brain fog, it's a thing.
Yeah.
When I came back from maternity, I was thinking, can I do my job? Like some days I hadn't had any sleep, so I was working a full day, having no sleep and looking at a title and thinking, is this going in? Because brain fog is a real thing, but just offering that level of support. And, if there are days that any employee would struggle, then, I'd like to think that they'd be supported not only by myself, but by other members of the management team. And I think they really would have that level of support.
So you've had obviously a really great experience, and sadly for some women returning from maternity leave, they don't have that level of support. And for the women that are struggling from like a postnatal health perspective, even if it's a case of I just don't feel confident at my job anymore, or if they're experiencing sort of deeper struggles, and if they don't have that support at work, or if they don't feel like they've got anyone to speak to or turn to, Nicola, what would you suggest for these women? What can they do? What sort of support could they reach out for? Where can they go?
At our workplace, we have an in-house counsellor, and I would recommend it to any employer. And anybody can contact the HR department and state that they want to see the counsellor, and they'll be booked in for that, and they can go along. They can discuss any problems they have with work. It's all confidential, or in their private life, whether they are struggling. There is the option. Then, if they want to have more flexible appointments, whether that be outside of work time as well, and I would recommend that to any employer, just to look after the well-being of all your staff. It might be something really, really minor, but just that little bit of advice, and particularly for mothers as well, just that reassurance and being able to give them the confidence. I know when I returned to work after my first child that my confidence is pretty much rock bottom, and it's really, really difficult sometimes. And I think it's really difficult, and it is a bit imposter syndrome of going back and thinking, can I do this job as well as I used to do it? Can I manage that? Can I manage this full workload and be a mother at the same time? And that's really difficult. Last year, with the stamp duty deadline, holidays, and all the pressure, the Conveyancing Foundation launched the Be Kind We Care initiative. And that was with law care and agents together. And that is just to open the dialogue between estate agents, conveyancers, and other stakeholders within the conveyancing industry. And just, it's Be Kind We Care. It's being kind to one another, regardless of where you are within the conveyancing process, and just understanding that the well-being and mental health of people is paramount to everybody within the transaction in order, to get it over the line. I think one of our partnered charities, which is Law Care, they offer a 24-hour hotline.
Oh, amazing.
So, and that is not just conveyancing, it's anybody within the legal profession. So there is a telephone number that people can call, they can discuss, and it isn't just issues that are relating solely to their work. They can call at any time. It's basically like Samaritans, but for people in the legal profession.
Oh, amazing. We'll pop the details of that in the podcast description, but because it's one of these as well, isn't it? Like, life is stressful, and let alone big life events happening, having kids, pandemics, all of that, and then working in a job that is client facing and really demanding and puts so much pressure on you. Sometimes it can feel very lonely. So having a helpline like that is amazing. I wanted to touch quickly as well, because obviously we're talking about the return to work and looking and caring for our staff, after they've had babies and stuff. What about during pregnancy? Because some women sail through it, whereas when I was working as a paralegal, the lawyer that I supported, she was having her first baby. She struggled so much with her pregnancy. She was so ill every day. And we had to then step up and offer her extra support. What was your experience like? If you'd like to share what your experience was like, Michelle.
Yeah, so my experience, so I had a pretty easy pregnancy up till about 26 weeks. And then I'd had a growth scan and they said that Mila was going to be small. So that then involved me having to travel from Shirley, where my office is based, to Coventry twice a week for 14 weeks.
How far is that journey?
So probably about 30 miles.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, twice a week, every week, to fetal Wellbeing, to sit on a monitor for an hour, sometimes 4-5 hours, and to see a consultant. So it got to the point where I was probably at the office either 2 mornings or 2 afternoons per week. But I think as a company and as a team, what we did from the outset was reduce my caseload to ensure that I wasn't burnt out to the point where I could manage my caseload and not be overworked, overstressed, managing that stress. We did a risk assessment to make sure that my working environment was safe for myself. In terms of travelling back and forth to the hospital, my work was picked up in the so if I was at the office, one of the girls, my team are amazing, and they would pick up my work and help me out, to make sure that clients' expectations were met and people were moving. But yeah, certainly had a positive experience where I have friends, and I won't name drop, who are also in the legal profession, who have not had positive experiences, and it makes me really, really sad that they've been subject to that, especially.
Do you mean they've not had positive experiences in terms of their pregnancies are difficult, or they haven't had that support and flexibility that you had from their employer?
Yeah, where they've had difficult pregnancies and haven't had that support. So they've been able to go to their appointments because it's a legal requirement, but then have come back and had a day's worth of work left on their desk that they've then got to catch up on. Haven't had their caseloads reduced, haven't put an exit strategy into place, and I think that's really important. And I think when Laura, who's an associate in our Tamworth office, I think when she found out she was pregnant, very early on we put a plan into place to make sure that her caseload was reduced, it was manageable, and that she was able to reduce that caseload before she went on maternity leave without putting an additional burden on her team members.
So I guess that's really important then, isn't it? The pregnancy element. I mean, again, where I worked previously, my boss, but she'd have a really important meeting at 10, morning sickness, in the toilets at work at 9, and then had to get on Zoom or pop into a meeting room. And it is really important then, I guess, to offer from the outset that flexibility is there if you need it. If you need to reduce your caseload, if you need us to step up and support you, it's there. Or if you're having a great pregnancy and you want it perfect, would you say, Nicola, that flexibility is offered to soon-to-be mums right at the beginning?
I think again it would differ from firm to firm, but I think that everybody just needs to level up really. It's great to hear that you had a wonderful experience, and it can be so different from mother to mother, and every pregnancy can be very different. My first pregnancy, I worked till 38 weeks without any issues whatsoever. My second pregnancy, I think from 18 weeks, I was on crutches.
Oh, wow.
So it's just very, very, very different. And morning sickness, or I think there's some, people that want to change it to say pregnancy sickness because it can last all day long. But yeah, I think business leaders, employers, if there is a member of staff telling you that they're pregnant and they're early on in their pregnancy, it would just be really wise to make plans, because there is no guarantee that person is going to be, I think we all want to work until the very, very last point, but there's no guarantee that you will be able to do that. Even people carrying twins, it's very unlikely that they will go full term, and that, babies can arrive when babies want to arrive. So I think we just all need to have the plans in place and to have an idea of when files can be handed over to other staff if need be, so that if there is a case whereby you're informed that a baby has been born or that person cannot return to work during their pregnancy, that there is a backup plan.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think just going back to that point, I think that is the key point. I think at a very early stage you need to plan for your business, because like you say, there was a point where I got to 26 weeks and they were like, right, we're going to have to deliver this baby at 30 weeks. And I'd already in my head set a date that I knew I wanted to work up to.
First I was like, no, this is the day.
This is the day that I'm having my baby. And I think I was due to break up on the 28th of May. And then I was like, can I just work another week? And it was like, and I actually worked right up until the Friday that I went into hospital to have Mila on the Saturday, and it was only at the point where I logged on the Friday morning to catch up with my last few emails, and I was like, oh, I've got no emails. And I rang Natalie. I was like, have you cut my emails off? And she's like, yeah, like, you're going into hospital tomorrow, you need to relax, like
Amazing.
Go and pack your hospital bag, or go do what you need to do. But I think, yeah, definitely. And I think we're like really harsh on ourselves, that we think actually, we want to make sure that everything's done before we go into hospital, that actually it will be okay. And as long as you've got an amazing team in place, which we have, that that things will be okay, and things will continue. I mean, the day that I'd had Mila, Vicky had purchased a house herself, and I was like, I'll sort it, and you were like, no.
Michelle was trying to act on my behalf, but she was in the hospital. I was like, no, stop working. Which again, though,
Yeah, and I think that never goes away with you, but, it is okay. And as long as you've got a plan in place and the team are supportive, everything will be okay.
Yeah. I'd just like to finish on maybe both of you, from your own sort of personal perspective and from your professional perspective as well, just giving some final words of support and encouragement to any mums. I've had a lot of friends that had COVID babies, and because of the pandemic, the whole returning back to work, the new normal, that was kind of a worry and stress on everyone and anyone. But then returning back to work and then dealing with the mum guilt, the natural mum guilt, the separation anxiety. For anyone that's due to go back to work, what sort of final words of support would you offer them?
I think just keep the line of communication open and be transparent with your employer. If you are struggling, I think make that known, so that they can put that support in place. If not at a management level, speak to an associate level or somebody, or even one of any of the team. And there's always somebody who knows what you're going through. I remember thinking, I've got brain fog one day and speaking to one of the girls and be like, is this actually a thing? And they're like, yeah, it is. And I was like, okay. And my best friend, who's also a lawyer, she's just had a baby at the similar time. And I say to her, I'm like, I don't think I can do my job. Like, I've got brain fog. And she's like, so have I. It's not just you. And I think just being transparent, keeping the line of communication, talking, and just, if you need a phase return, that's fine. I had a phase return. I worked from home for 3 months before I actually went back into the office, but I went into the office once a week just to make sure that I was still in the loop, that I was still overseeing things. And you got this, and you can be an amazing lawyer, and you can be an amazing mom. And the mom guilt never goes away. Even yesterday, I was working all day, and I get home, and then I get an hour with Mila, and then you think, oh God, I've got to log back on, and this morning I'm rushing around trying to get ready for work, and she's sitting there playing, and it just never goes away. But be the best mom where you can, and there's no reason why that can't impact on your job, and vice versa.
Definitely. And how about you, Nicola?
Yeah, very much the same. I think as a mother, just be as prepared as you can. I would recommend any mums, if they're due to go back, do some dry runs. So if you do have childcare, or you're dropping off a family member, do that for a few times before you have to go back to work.
That's
There's
such
nothing
a good
worse
idea.
than going and leaving a crying child with separation anxiety at nursery on the day that you're supposed to go back to work. Yeah, ask for help if you need it. There are other mothers or other parents in the workplace, and be transparent. If there's something that you need, then ask for it. And I'm sure that asking the employer if they're not able to support that, there'll be some kind of compromise that you can come to. That from me, I think.
Definitely. And I think it's just one of those, like, I'm not a mum yet, but so many of my friends have had babies recently, and we have a WhatsApp group where they just share experiences, or if you just kind of need to brain dump and say, oh my goodness, this just happened, or here's a nappy explosion, or just some things that you...
To lighten the mood.
To lighten the mood, but to just feel like someone's there and we're in it together. And I think, and I always say to you, don't I? I'm like, you are a superwoman. How do the parents do it? You're doing everything, but you're also doing your best at all times. And I think so many mums, because you just do it and you just step up to the plate, you step up at work and you're juggling everything, you forget actually how incredible you're doing. So for all of our listeners, keep going, girl power as well, like we said as well. You're doing amazing. And again, share this podcast with other people that are about to become parents, again, just to get that conversation going, and just really open up the conversations so that you have those words of support and encouragement. But yeah, this has been fab. Thank you both so much for joining us. Such an important conversation. And also, Nicola and Michelle, this was your first podcast interview, wasn't it? And you were both so nervous and you smashed it. So thank you so much, and we'll hopefully speak to you again soon.